Honourable Abil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me the opportunity to intervene today. I've been listening to all honourable members from both sides of the House intervening in one way or another on the speech, on the budget speech of the Honourable Minister of Finance. And I've noticed that we are all very passionate about our country. We've got different ways of expressing ourselves. We've got different ideas as to how our country should move. But we are all very passionate, we are all patriots, and we should have these ideas that set esprit de partage and to accept views, interpretations of all members of this House so that at the end of the day, Mauritius should come successful out of all these debates. I've listened very carefully to my honourable friend, Honourable Dalia, with regards to his quest on fraud and corruption, with regards to innovation. But let me give him some figures, which is not from the opposition, it is from international organizations. If you're talking about developing innovation, the innovation industry in Mauritius, you need to have a good fixed broadband speed. Do you know, in the recent Speed Test Global Index, what is the rank of Mauritius? We are 130th out of 170 countries, Mr. Speaker, sir. Far behind countries like South Korea, even Brazil, with regards to innovation. With regards to fraud and corruption, Mr. Speaker, sir, the latest Global Corruption Barometer, Africa 2019, a survey was organized by Transparency International together with Afrobarometer, and 61% of Mauritians, 61% of Mauritians are of the view that corruption has increased in the previous 12 months. This is not the opposition who is stating that. This is in this report. It is also saying that 62% are of the view that their government is doing a bad job in tackling corruption. So these are the major weaknesses in our society. That is why, Mr. Speaker, sir, Budget Day is the time of the year when hard-working citizens of this country look up to the government for hope and for a plan. They want some peace of mind that their money are being and will be astutely spent, that the government is investing on their behalf wisely and efficiently in sectors that will create opportunities for the youth of this country. Opportunities that will generate growth. And Mr. Speaker, sir, that will help them provide a better life for their own families. This year, Mr. Speaker, sir, more than any, the population had a legitimate expectation that the Honourable Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development would first and foremost come out and show to them the autopsy report of the state in which our economy lies as at date. That the Honourable Minister would have looked into their eyes and would have told them, Mr. Speaker, sir, the bitter truth, that our economic indicators are in the red. And the country, unfortunately, has performed worse than expected. That our gross domestic product in 2020 contracted by 14.9% against an initial forecast of 7%. That our debt to GDP rocketed to 95%. Whilst, Mr. Speaker, sir, unemployment, as intensely pointed out by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition in his speech, with facts and figures from Statistics Mauritius, are on a sharp increase, and more specifically amongst the youth. Honorable Shakil Mohammed also pointed out this alarming reality on the rise in unemployment rate. That last year, Mr. Speaker, sir, government voted a sum of about 147 milliards de rupees to face the new normal. And that same was intended to be spent during the financial year. And that instead, only around 25 milliards out of the 147 milliards has been spent to date. Mr. Speaker, sir, the population expected the Honourable Minister also to explain that last year he forked out funds from the reserves of the Bank of Mauritius, unprecedented, and that this year he will plunge his fingers into the coffers of 4 state-owned enterprises to fork out around 9 milliards de rupees, 3,5 milliards from the Central Electricity Board, 2,4 milliards de rupees from State Trading Corporation, 1,5 milliards de rupees from the Mauritius Ports Authority, and 1,5 milliards de rupees from the Financial Services Commission. Mr. Speaker, sir, last year the Honourable Minister advocated that our new normal will be the economy of life, and went on to say, and I quote, that is why this budget is focusing on the following triptych: rolling out the plan de relance de l'investissement et de l'économie, engaging in major structural reforms, securing sustainable and inclusive development. Instead, Mr. Speaker, sir, this budget, which is utterly lacking in ambition and has missed the golden opportunity to put into practice what was intended for last year. And suffice to say that this budget is in no way fulfilling those announced benchmarks, Mr. Speaker, sir. On the contrary, not a single measure achieved yet from last year with regard to engaging in major structural reforms. Our people expected a much bolder approach from the Honourable Minister of Finance. Our people was also expecting this budget exercise to be a game changer in terms of laying the foundation stone for a new economic model, identifying and paving the way for the emergence of new pillars of the economy. At this point in time, Mr. Speaker, sir, in our country's political history, it would have been a meaningful and much awaited move if the Honourable Minister of Finance could have been more innovative in his approach and contents of his budget speech, but this is not the case. One would have expected a budget that will break away from the standard stereotyped practice of announcing measures in a general manner and avoid being repetitive of what have already been uttered in previous budget speeches. And it would have been a welcome move if the Honourable Minister would have spoken a language of truth and not to brush under the carpet alarming figures as to the state of our economy, whilst sugarcoating additional taxes that are being introduced indirectly to the detriment of the population at large. Mr. Speaker, sir, instead of focusing on reignited private investment in the productive sectors of the economy, introducing major reforms to address the structural weaknesses in our system, doing more but with less for efficiency, investing to enhance productivity and sharpen competitiveness and reversing the declining trend in the export of goods and services, the Minister has embarked on an unrestrained expenditure trails that will in no way boost the economy and achieve the expected growth. More alarming, Mr. Speaker, sir, our rupee is depreciating dangerously. $1 is around 41 rupees and €1 is around 49 rupees. Yet not a single word in this budget of how the Honourable Minister will address this disquieting scenario. The population at large, the consumers, are being seriously affected, Mr. Speaker, sir, by this weakening of our rupee. For example, retail prices of basic commodities like milk, for example, increased by more than 20% during the last 6 months. Rice has increased by more than 11%. Chicken and meat, medicines, and other pharmaceutical products are day by day getting more expensive. Go and ask those old age pensioners Much are not left with their monthly allowance that they get. Because, sorry?
No, please.
No, I thought you were addressing me.
Don't disturb.
I thought
Don't
you were
get disturbed.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, la cherté de la vie, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is something which is of a reality, and we are living with it. We're all living with it. We're all going to the supermarkets, and we know how expensive life is all about. And the people of Mauritius are looking up to the government, to the Honourable Minister of Finance, to find ways and means so that our rupee do not continue to depreciate, so that there are meaningful attempts being made to stabilize the depreciation of our rupee. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will now elaborate on certain measures in this budget that at the same time are mere repetitions of measures already announced in previous budgets, but at the same time will make the citizens of this country realize as to how they are being taken for a ride. Let us take the construction of Rivière des Anguilles Dam. Year in, year out, it has been announced. I heard yesterday Honorable Raoult and Honorable Minister Jagat Pal relishing on the fact that this will be a landmark project in constituency number 13. Well, let me remind them that in Budget Speech 2010, at paragraph 253, it was announced that the Rivière des Anguilles Dam will be constructed at a cost of 2.5 milliards de rupees. In last year's budget speech, Mr. Speaker, sir, at paragraph 28, same announcement after 10 years, but now at a cost of 7.5 milliards de rupees. And after 1 year, same announcement, that is 2021, but now it has escalated to 9.4 milliards de rupees. I do hope that this project goes ahead, but looking at the track record of this government, I have got serious doubts, and one can expect that this will be announced in next year's budget again, and by then the figure of more than 10 milliards de rupees will be reached. Construction of a fishing port, for example, announced way back in 2015 by former Minister Lakshmi Naraidu. And in 2019 budget of the Honorable Prime Minister, who was then the Minister of Finance, nothing has been done. Not a single stone has been laid for the foundation of this port de pêche. Same for the cruise terminal. With regards to other measures announced, I will specifically point out at page 8, under the Economic Recovery Programme, a sum of 250 million rupees have been budgeted for embellishment of beaches, cleaning of rivers and canals, rehabilitation of heritage and tourist sites, greening of towns and villages, and upgrading of sewerage infrastructure. Again, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is no clear indication as to how those funds will be allocated. And as the leader of the opposition pointed out, embellishment is not just about recruiting people and giving them some basic tools to go and do the cleaning of those sites without planification. Whether professionals in landscaping will be engaged. Look at Singapore or Dubai, for instance, Mr. Speaker, sir. When you visit those countries, you will see that their motorways, their roadsides are always clean, well maintained, and that their lawns and grasses are regularly trimmed, and varieties of flowers all over the years are planted and watered. Look at the sad state of our motorways and roadsides, Mr. Speaker, sir. Every session, when we've got adjournment matters, honourable members of all sides of this House, from the opposition, from government, we do raise loads of these questions on a day-to-day basis. But it should not be something that should be done au petit bonheur, in an amateur way. There should be a proper plan, a master plan. Work together with the private sector. Work together with people who's got expertise in those sectors. The private sector, they do well maintain their yards. They've got expertise. It doesn't cost loads of money. It is just willpower to clean up the island. I do hope that the sum being earmarked will do justice to the intention, I hope, good intention of the Honourable Minister of Finance to clean up Mauritius. And if we do If he does so, he will have the full support of all members of this House, because we need a clean Mauritius, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also note that government no longer uses the phrase Dilo Venkatsit, but rather cautiously mentioning at paragraph 44 that government remains committed to deliver on its engagement to provide regular water supply to the population. Again, I do hope that those projects that have been announced do go ahead to alleviate the real problem of water supply that year in, year out, our people face all over the island. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Minister mentioned also at page 17 the shaping of a new economic architecture, the green energy industry. Again, this is not new, Mr. Speaker, sir. Honourable Usman Mohamed, Honourable David explained at length that same was already elaborated way back in 2010 under the Maurice Île Durable project. All the goals and milestones to be reached in terms of our country's energy needs from green sources by 2030 was already a set target at that particular point in time. But I do welcome this politics of continuity in terms of the green energy economy, and in the same vein, the diversification of the manufacturing sectors and different incentives provided in promoting establishment of new structures like the pharmaceutical industry. But again, these are no new pillars. It has been announced way back in 2010 again. Mr. Speaker, sir, there has been some timid attempt also, but it is welcome, with regard to the increase in per capita grant for children attending private pre-primary schools from 200 rupees to 400 rupees. Yet, with the funds available in the war chest of the Honourable Minister, this could have well been increased to at least 1,000 rupees to benefit those 20,000 children annually. We're talking about some 20 million rupees, peanuts compared to the huge amount of funds that will be amassed through various increase in taxes. But there is one measure in this year's budget that has dealt us all a serious blow, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is found at page 12, paragraph 8 of the annex to the budget speech, the levy on motor gas and gas oil. 2 rupees per litre to finance the cost of COVID-19 vaccines, Mr. Speaker, sir. Seriously, this measure, which is another tax being imposed on our people, shows the lack of sympathy on the part of the government, when we all very know the sizable funds available to the Honourable Minister of Finance for the purchase of vaccines. And why same cannot be catered for in the budget allocated to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, for example. This 2 rupee tax will seriously impact on the day-to-day living of many people, but especially those self-employed in the informal sector and all those people who are struggling. And Mr. Speaker, sir, how heartless from a government to ask its people to foot the bill in this case, when government is duty-bound to cater for the public health of its fellow citizens. But what is more of a paradox, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the extension up to June 2022 of the excise duty rebate scheme with regard to motor vehicles. On the one hand, government is encouraging people to avail themselves of this rebate and to go and purchase motor vehicles. But at the same time, it will tax you when you will purchase more gas and gas oil. It summarizes a lack of coherence in government policies, and this brings us to the crisis being faced by our institutions. Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, our institutions. Whatever good measures or good intention that a government may have, if you do not have vibrant, independent and strong institutions, then you are doomed to fail. And this is what we find ourselves in every year, with only a quarter of the budgeted sums put into use, because our institutions are failing the country. And one of the major weaknesses, omission in this budget, is no attempt whatsoever to engage in major structural reforms of our institutions, be it Landscope, or the EDB, or the Bank of Mauritius, ICAC, FIU. They need restructuring. And to do so, we have to do away with this policy of putting political nominees who do not have the required expertise and pedigree to run those institutions. Same applies for our fight against drugs. Illegal drug trafficking in Mauritius. We are topping the list in Southern Africa in heroin trade, in synthetic drug trades. The Lam Shangling report very vividly put it out that we need to have a national drugs commission. I know the government is very adamant to keep ADSU, but in the 1986 Drug Commission report of the then Chief Justice Rowe, they disbanded the narcotic division and created ADSU. So why this hesitancy on the part of government? We are not saying to go and sack all people working at ADSU. We are asking for the creation of a national drugs commission because our policies are failing in our fight against drugs. It is not massive seizure of drugs that are preventing drug trafficking in this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. So our institutions need to be revamped, and we've got this report of former Judge Lam Shangling to put into practice. For God's sake, put it into practice. Bring this National Drugs Commission. This will help in the fight against drug abuse, drug trafficking in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regards to powers being vested to EDB, the Economic Development Board, for example, we are creating again a super ministry. Major roles played by the executive through various ministries are being taken over by EDB. I just wonder what many of our honorable ministers will do in cabinet, because most of their jobs are being taken over by EDB. We are creating a super ministry which is out of control of many of the ministries, and we will just have to accept fait accompli and then come to cabinet, and they will bear the consequences because they are answerable to Parliament. They will have to bear the questions from the people through the opposition and through members of the backbenches of the government as well. So I do not understand why so much powers are vested in EDB when we've got several ministries, public institutions to do the job. I've spoken about corruption index. I will not go into much details again, but let me say so, Mr. Speaker, sir, with regards to the creation of the setting up of the Financial Crime Commission. For us to fight corruption, financial crimes, we need the Financial Crime Commission. But for me, Mr. Speaker, sir, again, it is effet d'annonce. Let me remind this House that way back in February 2015, replying to a PNQ from the then leader of the opposition, Honorable Paul Béranger, the then Prime Minister, former the Right Honorable Sandhu Jagnat, with regard to the introduction of a new legislation for the setting up of a Financial Crime Commission. This is what he replied, and I quote, 2015. As the House is aware, the Government Programme 2015-2019 provides as follows, and I quote, Government has a mandate for change and will relentlessly fight fraud, corruption, and financial crime. To that effect, a Financial Crime Commission will be set up to act as an apex body to oversee the ICAC, the Financial Intelligence Unit, and the Enforcement Department of the Financial Services Commission. Government will leave no stone unturned to eradicate fraud, corruption, malpractices, irregularities in all aspects of public life and restore our national values. In 2016, again, in Parliament, same reiteration from the former Prime Minister. In 2017, FSC had a communique saying that they are going ahead with the setting up of a Financial Crime Commission. We are in year 2021, Mr. Speaker, sir. Where is the Financial Crime Commission bill? What the Honourable Minister should have done, it should have brought this Financial Crime Commission bill with a certificate of urgency before this House, before the presentation of this budget. And once again, as last year, only 10 million rupees has been earmarked, which is the proof that this will not happen. You will not go ahead with the Financial Crime Commission. It is for the sake of just announcing you put it in your budget speech. Mr. Speaker, sir, the international community, donor agencies, the EU have been watching this government since 2015. And this government should walk the talk with the setting up of the FSCC. But this will not be the case. The Honourable Minister will confirm same when he will sum up his speech that this will not happen. The Financial Crime Commission will not be set up. This will send a very wrong signal, especially to EU when we are asking to be put out of this ominous blacklist. But Mr. Speaker, sir, we owe this to all those 12,000 people working in the financial services. We owe it to our country that this Financial Crime Commission should be set up at the earliest. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, ICAC is dysfunctional. It is an organization that is not working. Our Parliamentary Committee on ICAC is not working because we are not able to fulfill our responsibilities. We need to revert this act because as at now, since the establishment of this law, no ICAC Parliamentary Committee has been able to come before this Assembly with recommendations and guidelines for major amendments to the law. No. And this is one of the major flaws of this ICAC Parliamentary Committee, and this is why it is not working. And I believe, sir, that is why in 2015, Sani Jagannath has said that the Financial Crime Commission should be an apex body. I think to pay tribute to his memory, this government should be serious with coming forward once and for all with this Financial Crime Commission. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will pause here to make a proposal with regard to a pillar of the economy, which I feel is also a key to economic growth and which, unfortunately, has not been considered by the Honourable Minister of Finance. The blue economy, Mr. Speaker, sir, is not just about the fisheries sector. Honourable David and Honourable Usman Mohamed again laid much emphasis as to the importance of this sector. Blue economy, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods and jobs, and ocean ecosystem health. The blue economy encompasses many activities, and amongst others, we have maritime transport, Mr. Speaker, sir. Over 80% of international goods traded or transported by sea, and the volume of seaborne trade is expected to double in 2030 and quadruple in 2050. We need to make Mauritius a maritime hub. Mr. Speaker, sir, on average, 50 ships go through the Suez Canal in both directions every day. In 2019, Mr. Speaker, sir, Egypt collected nearly 6 billion USD in revenues from the Suez Canal. When it was closed following the incident where ultra-large container in March 2021 named Ever Given, in Egypt experienced a shortfall of USD 16 million per day. 16 million per day. Comparatively, the nearby waters of Mauritius can count as many as 35 vessels annually, which translate to nearly 100 vessels per day, Mr. Speaker, sir. There are ways and means to attract those vessels to Mauritius to generate benefits for our economy. In fact, way back in 2015, the bunkering hub was presented as part of the Vision 2030, again by Sani Jagannath. And perhaps it is time to revisit the concept in a more holistic approach. And I invite the Honourable Minister of Finance to consider the same. Other than bunkering, the Mauritian Maritime Hub could provide a range of services in a more elaborate manner, as is the case now, such as transshipment, shipyard services, amongst others. As for ship registration, Mr. Speaker, sir, no comparative benchmarking study with ship registration powerhouses such as Panama, Liberia, Malta appear to have been undertaken by this government in order to come up with an attractive package for them. The Suez Canal incident forced some ships, Mr. Speaker, sir, to use Cape Route, which so happens to be the ancient maritime Silk Route. Looking back in history, Mr. Speaker, sir, and forward in the future, we can see the rich pickings along those critical maritime trade routes, along which our island happens to be situated, which earn our country the title of Stella Clavis Maris Indici, the star and key of the Indian Ocean. We should go back to our roots, which is on our coat of arms. We should become the star and key of the Indian Ocean. Maritime hub, the bunkering hub, this is the future of this country. We should go back to our roots. A few words on the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, sir. In Budget 2019, at paragraph 334, it was announced that there will be a new legislation to set up a separate Court of Appeal, We are still waiting for same. Now, with a state-of-the-art Supreme Court fully operational and the recruitment of more personnel done, it is also high time in the spirit of our new normal to legislate and bring on also the creation of this separate Court of Appeal for a proper administration of justice at the earliest, when we all know how expensive it is to appeal before the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council and heavy costs that the State of Mauritius will be paying very soon. Mr. Speaker, sir, I shall conclude by saying the following. The youth of this country is losing hope. Nothing mentioned to tackle the high rate of youth unemployment. No master plan. Nor any program for the creation of more green jobs. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, sir, the scope of earning a decent job will diminish with foreigners being given all facilities to bring on their entire families to come, live and work in. If this government has the willpower and vision to tackle youth unemployment, then there should be a 2-year strategy plan to reduce same from 26% down to single digit. I shall thus summarize this budget speech by qualifying this as a budget of all hidden taxes. After the Contribution Sociale Généralisée tax of last year, the sugar tax, now the COVID-19 vaccine tax, and our population will continue to suffer, and our country will continue to crumble under billions of debts. Recovery, revival, resilience, yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. But we need rebooting, rebranding, and reskilling as well. I just hope, as a patriot, that the Honourable Minister will take all positive criticisms from this side of the House as well, and to redress the economy before it is too late. God bless our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Shall suspend the sitting for an hour and a half.